We got this from The Week. Defendants in alleged Whitmer kidnapping plot are arguing FBI informants engineered plan. Now, I'll just say this. I mean, that's a heavy piece of what we're going to talk about. It's one thing to make that accusation. It's another thing when Buzzfeed News of all outlets comes out and says there are questions as to whether or not there would have even been a conspiracy were it not for the FBI. And then there's questions of law. Do you think that federal prosecutors are going to drop this case simply because it's now being exposed by the media? Maybe not, but it's possible. I just really doubt it. There's not going to be political willpower, and especially when Democrats want to use this to their advantage. But let me show you this. So this is the story from The Week, all right? And they're basically pointing out the section of the Buzzfeed article about the defendant saying they're accusing the FBI of effectively orchestrating this. Buzzfeed News says, an examination of the case by Buzzfeed News also reveals some of those informants, of which there were 12, acting under the direction of the FBI, played a far larger role than has previously been reported. Working in secret, they did more than just passively observe and report on the actions of the suspects. Instead, they had a hand in nearly every aspect of the alleged plot, starting with its inception. The extent of their involvement raises questions as to whether there would have even been a conspiracy without them. I'll do you one better, BuzzFeed. I can appreciate that they put that in there. That is an opinion, however, but I can give my opinion. When you go on to mention that a longtime government informant helped organize a series of meetings around the country where many of the alleged plotters first met one another, yeah, there wouldn't be without the FBI. They set the meetings. So, okay, look, the FBI is going to argue, hey, we gave them the space and we made those statements, but they made those choices. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's disgusting. I think it's only it's incitement unless the FBI is doing it. Apparently, it's only illegal unless the president does it. Like, come on.
If Trump didn't say anything anywhere near as crazy as these people were saying.
If the FBI goes to somebody that's mentally unstable and puts a gun in their hand and says, encourages them or points them in the direction of someone that they want, like that's, how can you blame that? I guess you got to blame the gunman. But obviously you blame Charles Manson when the other guy went out and stabbed the people.
They were giving these guys military training.
What?
What do you think about it, Pedro?
This is what the FBI does. I mean, this is what the feds do. They create these plots. They provide the training, the logistical coordination, and then they basically entrap their victims. And so the question is, why do they do that, right? I think there are different answers to that. I think, one, it's politically useful because Trump is bad. Trump was a fascist, of course. I'm just being sarcastic. But I think so it's politically useful from that angle, at least for the Democratic Party. But on the other hand, I mean, this is good business for the FBI, right? This is job security. If you have these kinds of threats, if you have these kinds of coordinated, very dangerous, highly motivated actors, then you need the FBI. You don't just need the FBI. The FBI needs a bigger budget. It needs to expand its operations into different aspects of not just public life, but also private life. It needs to know more about what Americans are doing so that it can make sure that these things don't happen. And the fact that the FBI is, the driving cause of these things happening, well, that's just a little footnote that we don't need to really get into.
I don't think there's a solution to, I don't think there's an easy solution to corruption. I say easy solution. I'm thinking about like, okay, what if we didn't have government FBI, right? What if we had private investigatory agencies and you hired them instead of having to go and make a petition and cross your fingers, hope they actually look into the case? Maybe you go and hire a company. Well, then any company could be incentivized to do criminal activities for the sake of making money, right? So let's say you're a window repair company and, you're a private company. You make money when windows get broken. You're certainly excited when you hear Antifa's rioting. So any individual who is sufficiently corrupt or who has monopolistic power could be susceptible to saying, okay, how can we encourage more riots and support some more of this activism and encourage this stuff? Because inadvertently it allows us to sell more windows. Actually, Ryan Long had that comedy segment. Did you see that one where it's Antifa window repair? And he's like, we're both simultaneously Antifa and the window repair company. Right. But anyway, I digress. When you have the FBI and they have a monopoly on this and they want to make money and increase their budgets, there's one way to do it. You need a large and powerful big bang. Well, here you go. Right. They had a dozen informants. So it's an interesting point. First, what is entrapment? This probably is not entrapment. Entrapment would be when you coerce someone by force or threats. So if a cop went to you and said, if you don't do this, I'll hit you, that's entrapment. If they said, hey, wouldn't it be really awesome if you did this? You should totally do it.
That's right.
That's not entrapment. You still chose to do it. The problem is there's a fine line, right? I mean, you actually have the FBI now creating the means, the providing the resources. These things can't happen without them.
Right.
Like, who's going to give military training to a bunch of random meme, ish posters on the internet?
That's right. No, it gets into this question, like you said, these blurred lines, right? Where it's kind of like choice architecture. You're laying out all of the instruments and arguments and logistics for doing this, and you're also exploiting people who are desperate and angry and maybe mentally unstable. And your defense is, well, I just put the gun on the table. I don't have any responsibility for what that person did afterwards, after I told them to use the gun and how to use it and who they should use it on. That's not my fault.
Ian made a good point, man. It's incitement.
It is. It seems like incitement. I mean, they're encouraging them or getting them revved up or connecting them to commit a crime. It seemed like.
Let me pull up this part of the BuzzFeed article. They say this. They say Dan steered. Let me move back a little bit. Let me move back so I can get to that point in the context. They say, as agents Impola and Chambers listen in, Dan pressed him about the meeting in Ohio. Dublin, Fox said, was about changing the paradigm. The media treated patriots unfairly. After he and hundreds of other patriots occupied the State House in Lansing, they effing called us domestic terrorists. That's a quote. Quote, we want to take that stigma off and let them know who we are because we are not effing racists. We are not white nationalists, said Fox. We just want our effing Constitution upheld, and we want all these lawless effing tyrants out of effing power. It's that simple. Dan steered the conversation away from rhetoric to specific plans, asking Fox what the mission was. Like, what are we looking to go forward with? Laughing, Fox said his dream was to have, quote, have the governor hogtied down on a table for public display the way the DEA agents spread seized guns and drugs across the table like trophies after a big bust. Quote, we take the building and then take effing hostages, Fox told Dan. It's effing wartime. But by his own admission, Fox, despite his new seemingly grand military title, was a general without soldiers. I can't do nothing with less than 200 men, he complained to Dan. At best, he figured he could muster maybe 15 to 20 men. Stopping violent ideas like this was what Dan said drove him to law enforcement in the first place. But now, with his 2 FBI agents at his side, he told Fox he would help. They're effectively inciting and encouraging. They're creating circumstances. It's incitement. Donald Trump can say, we're going to go peacefully march and listen to some politicians or whatever. That's what he said, right? He had something like, have politicians make arguments. And then as Trump was speaking, the people at the Capitol started pushing the barricades down, fighting with cops, storming their way up to the Capitol and fighting at the front door. Donald Trump did not do anything near what this is, but they say that there was a tweet now. I think it was the Daily Beast. I'm not sure. They were like, Trump's failed attempt to overthrow the government, or like some news outlet tweeted that. Like they're just, even the media, they're just continually escalating what really happened on the 6th. Like Donald Trump gave a speech where he in no way said, go do this stuff. He was like, peacefully march. And now they've just slowly turned it into something totally different. Like the Lincoln Project made this video where it's a mishmash of what Trump was saying to make it seem like he was calling for violence.
Right. Yeah.
I tell you, man, it's dark days ahead, huh?
Well, there's something related to this. So we can say that the Capitol Police failed, right? On January 6th, they failed to do their job. Some conservatives argue that they facilitated what happened through their failure. However you want to slice it. Okay.
Well, Tucker says the FBI had informants there probably orchestrated as well.
Yes, that's right. So, but we'll grant that. So these people, either out of negligence or malice, they're part of the reason why January 6th happened. Okay. So what happens after January 6th? Well, the Capitol Police has a $2 billion budget with which they plan to expand operations outside of the Capitol, first in Florida and California, 2 of the most populous states, with plans to open field offices across the country. They've also borrowed 8, they're called persistent surveillance systems from the U.S. government. The Army is going to train Capitol Police to use these. We first deployed this technology in Iraq and Afghanistan to monitor asymmetric threats. In other words, we use this technology against insurgents. So now Capitol Police, which is supposed to be in the Capitol, is expanding operations across the United States, ostensibly to protect members of Congress. And they're also going to be deploying technology that we used against insurgents on Americans in order to, what this stuff does is you can create, I think it's called pattern of life. It allows you to monitor people on a very intimate level to figure out, where they eat, where they sleep, where they go, what their routines are, and things like that. But over large geographical swaths. This is not like a little camera, right? This is huge surveillance on a mass level. This is fine, apparently. No one really seems to have a problem with it. And people are buying the argument that, no, the Capitol Police needs to do this. They need to expand operations to these huge states, or actually to all as many states as they want. And they also need to deploy military-grade equipment that we use on insurgents against Americans.
Mike Cernovich has been tweeting about this, saying that, he often hears someone start trying to ramp up the rhetoric and push it towards some kind of direct physical action, and he always shuts them down. He blocks them or he kicks them out because he's like, we don't want any of that. We know where that's going. And he's right. I keep telling people, peaceful, persuasive, resourceful. That's how you win a culture war. That's how you maintain your country. And one of the problems, there's two big problems. And one, conservatives, people on the right, the anti-establishment, the anti-woke, disaffected liberals. Well, I'm going to exclude the disaffected liberals. Mostly the right, as we've traditionally known it, very weak on culture. Very weak. I mean, people mock these, like the religious conservative movie productions and things like that. The Daily Wire is doing a pretty good job getting into this. The one big advantage I think conservatives have right now are disaffected liberals, many of whom were in music production and movie production and show production. Culture building wins you the youth. And 10 years from now, there's going to be another generation entering politics. And what 10-year-olds are being inundated with today is going to severely impact what politics will look like in 10 years. So one thing that we saw, I bring up every so often, is that, we've had some younger leftists on the show, and they have no idea what Occupy Wall Street was. They were young teenagers when that was happening and just had no understanding of what was going on. So now when I base my disdain for Joe Biden off of a lot of the Obama era, they're like, I don't know anything about that.
Right.
Now you look at what's happening with children and the indoctrination at schools. These kids who are in these schools getting indoctrinated 10 years from now are going to vote as far left as humanly possible. If conservatives and people on the right don't fight back with resourcefulness, with persuasion, being peaceful, and building culture, you lose, especially when you see what's going on with the FBI. They are looking for any opportunity to take that frustration, turn it into some kind of some expressed desire for action, and then lock you up. Yeah. And then it gives them even more justification for indoctrinating kids. Right. It's just one after another, 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah, I think maybe one example of a positive development in the culture is that movie about Richard Jewell, the security guard who was basically screwed by the FBI after he managed to save a ton of people. I think it was at a baseball game. It was some kind of a sporting event where there was a bomb, and basically the feds put it on him.
Right.
They argued that the reason he was able to find the bomb and save all these people was because he had in fact planted it. And the movie was interesting because Richard Jewell is like your average middle American. He's this guy who doesn't have like a college degree. He's just patriotic, kind of naive about his country. And I mean that in a good way. And here he is being absolutely railroaded by these horrible, corrupt feds, right? And I think that movie was really interesting precisely because that you have this patriotic person who's being persecuted by his own government.
You do not talk to police. That's it. It's simple. There's a famous Supreme Court justice, I can't remember his name, a long time ago, said, do not talk to cops. And it's funny, there are a lot of conservatives that seem to think they're very naive about what this country is. And it's funny when you see the very heavy back the blue like attitudes kind of waning a little bit with the COVID lockdowns and stuff. People are, many people on the right are starting to realize, like, I think, you know what, man, we shout out Michael Malice too much. Michael, you get shout out too much. But he often says that there is no law so, absurd or disgusting or amoral that a cop would not enforce it. Now, that may be a bit extreme because I certainly think there's many things a cop wouldn't do, to be honest. However, the Proud Boys versus Antifa is a really good example of this. That they got into a fight because Antifa had been harassing and patrons. One guy gets robbed. And then finally the Proud Boys are like, all right, you want to fight? A lot of people see the Proud Boys run towards Antifa. But Antifa had been basically like at every corner following them. And as much as they keep trying to walk away, they see Antifa at every corner. Eventually the Proud Boys decide they're going to engage. Well, first of all, that's a mistake. Don't start fights. You can try and go around them. You can try and walk past them. They run at them. A fight breaks out. Okay, well, if Antifa shows up, they're known to be violent, and a fight breaks out. We can argue that sometimes fights happen. I still think it's wrong. But what happened after that? Antifa flees. The Proud Boys decide to give a statement to the cops. Because we trust the cops. The cops are the good guys. And now guess who went to prison? Yeah. Proud Boys. Antifa, None of them.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.